Welcome to this talk through your brief development. I just wanted to go over this with you one last time before you finish off, just to make sure you've got everything covered. First of all, you'll see that we done here a photograph of board based on our brainstorm we did in term 3. And we have here the very start is exploring the context, and obviously the context in your case will either be a video or a website. I'll talk through using the video as the example, as I have done most of a term, because this relates to most of a class. If you've done a website, obviously you're doing this for your own client, and so therefore you will have your own set of context based around that particular need or opportunity. So starting off with an issue, if you're a website, you'll need to define what the issue is that your client has, and then the need or opportunity that you're going to meet as part of that. So for example, in the video, the issue we have is that our school needs growth, especially in the senior school, and it needs growth so that the options classes can expand and that students will be able to take more options. And so for example, some of the classes are only 10-12 students, and we really need to see greater growth in the senior school to have those classes fill up, and also to have more options available for students to take. So if you look at the issue, we could say Kingsway School's issue is that we need growth in the senior school so that options can be expanded, more options can come available, and therefore more people will want to come to our school. The need or opportunity around this, so now we're moving from issue to the need or opportunity. The need or opportunity around this is that we can create a video which advertises how excellent our school is and how wonderful it is, to widen the client base, have more students come, and then obviously with more students we have more options to be able to fill options classes. So I'm going to go here to the actual standard now, and you'll see here I've put the brief development achievement criteria, and you'll see the first two are identifying an issue as a result of exploring the context. It's a little bit it's not a direct match. Personally, I think that this is not so well worded, but you can just say in the context of the video or the context of the website, there is an issue. The issue is Kingsway School, or the issue is for your client, and then you determine the need or opportunity for that. In our case, the need or opportunity for the school. Let's get a video up on that website that really does showcase our school, because hey, we've got an awesome school. Associated stakeholders, this is part of the second bullet point. You are determining who the associated stakeholders are. So obviously the client is, in this case, Mrs. Gray, and I am also a stakeholder, definitely, because I'm your teacher. I've got an interest. So a stakeholder is anyone with a vested interest in your video or your website doing well. And obviously your client is there, but it's also the people who will be using the website, the people who will be using the video. In fact, Kingsway video should be on our website. Apparently that's being developed now. The third bullet point is, this is underachieved as well, is reflecting ongoing consideration of the social and physical environment where the outcome will be developed and situated. The two keywords there are actually there's three. The first one is ongoing. Because the word ongoing is in there, it means that throughout your brief development, the pages that you're writing, there should be a flow of development where you're showing that you're taking this into consideration. So you're taking into consideration what you're finding out about the social environment, in other words, who is going to be using your website or who's going to be looking at your video, and the physical environment, who's hosting it, how's it being hosted, how's the data transfer going to work, is it too image heavy, have you got a 4K video that's going to overload your resources, etc. So you've got to speak to those two things all the way through, and as you, for example, as you survey potential users or stakeholders, associated stakeholders, you should be getting feedback about their opinions of your website, their opinions of the video, the choice you use, the choice of music, the shots you're taking. So they should come back and inform this ongoing consideration. So for example, you might have a particular piece of music that you're looking at. You might have, say, 3 or 4 to choose from, and you should be surveying potential users. Now, I'm not saying here just class members, because remember that this video is aimed at parents, right? So yes, your class members or your own age group, that'll have some bearing, but let's face it, if the parent is paying to send their child to Kingsway School, it's not really about whether the student likes the music on the website. It's really aimed at the parent. They're the one shelling out the money, they're the one making the decision. Sure, that the student will have to look at the website and go, oh yeah, that's really awesome. So it'll help if both like it, but obviously if you get a piece of hip hop or something that students really like and young people like, but parents just can't stand, then you're shooting yourself in the foot. Physical environment, again, if it's a website, I want you to be thinking about your resources. You should have, for example, just the physical, to make it load well, you should have your graphics optimized. So please do not load 4K shots, still shots or whatever, or video onto a website or a streaming. It's just too big. So most people will optimize a website at even 1080 or even 720p. Is fine, and to be honest, most monitors it looks fine, unless you're really wanting to show something off with a lot of detail. I would leave it there. So you just got to talk about physical environment. Nothing worse than having someone, now for example the Kingsway website, for the video, that will be streaming across to foreign countries. We have a big vested interest in getting foreign students here. Sorry to say it, but it's true of all schools. A lot of our budget comes from this. And New Zealand is a huge, high value destination for a lot of Asian students, especially Chinese, etc., whose parents know that for success of their son and daughter in their society, integration into the English language and culture is totally essential. So it's why you get students sent over here at 15, 16 years old who are needing to be integrated into an English culture. And New Zealand's very good for it. And Kingsway School is very good for it. In fact, we've got a new student just arrived in term 4 from another school who was chosen Kingsway School. So a final word on the social and physical environment. If you are looking at the social environment, you're looking at the needs and the wants, the desires of the people who will be viewing or using your outcome, whatever that is. So you must take huge notice of their desires and wants. And so don't just write down you thought this, you really have to nail that home. Nail it home with surveys. I mean, no marker, no moderator can argue with the fact you've surveyed 10 people of the age group who are parents of a school or whatever it is, and they've said this, they like this colour, they like this font, or they like this music, or they like this whatever. So if you've done that, you've done your homework. Don't just make it your parents, make it quite a few. Physical environment where the outcome is developed, obviously that's its hosting or whatever. And just be aware of physical limitations of whatever could be wrong. So for example, the video, you might be finding that someone sitting in China is trying to watch this on a really bad connection, and so obviously you basically you can't go wrong with a H.264 format, and it's an MP4. So if you just, as long as you say these things and explain why, yes, I could go to 4K, but the bandwidth wouldn't cope, and some people would find this just such a drain. And no, I'm not going to run a high HD video and then a lower quality option. So we're going to compromise so that everyone's happy. Good enough quality. And the big thing to say, the take home to say about that is, say, an MP4 MPEG. These are great balancing point between having good picture quality and having a file size which is still manageable, and therefore your bandwidth is okay. We're now down to bullet point number 4. Reflecting ongoing key stakeholders' opinions. You cannot do this. Now we're talking about your client as well as key stakeholders. So do not just interview your client. You must have other stakeholders, people who are going to be using your outcome. So if they aren't the physical, the actual people using your outcome, then you are surveying people of that age or that demographic, parents or whatever you're aiming for. All right. So you must reflect their opinion, so therefore you must show throughout your brief development that you've had meetings, you've had surveys, you've had feedback from, and don't just suck it out of your thumb. Have a little chart and a little table, questions you asked, opinions, number of people who tick this or whatever. That really is a nail home for an excellence if you get it really good. If you're just kind of writing down, I talked to a few friends and they said this, that's pretty weak, so make it strong. Describing the outcome to be developed and explaining why such an outcome should be developed. This is getting into this whole justification of why you did this and etc. So really what you're doing here is you have to back yourself. You've got to say, listen, my client really wanted this, and this was the way we decided it should be done. We took advice from here, 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 and all of this advice, all of these surveys, all of the data we gathered, the research we did on prior websites or the prior videos, all of that pointed to this outcome being done in this way, with this layout, with these colors, with this font, with this music, with whatever you're doing, whether it's a website or a video. So you describe what it is, and you explain why this outcome should be developed and how, of course, it's going to meet the need or opportunity in order to solve the issue that the client has. Next bullet point, you're explaining physical and functional attributes required for an outcome. So your outcome is, in this case, I'll use the video, the outcome, the physical and functional. Physical attributes of your video. Okay, it will need to have, and you can do all your there's two parts to this. Remember that in a normal hard materials setting, the physical of your desk you're making would be such and such a size. The functional is it has 3 drawers, and you talk through it like that. A little bit trickier to nail in a DGT context, but you can still do it. So the physical attributes would be, it's a 3-minute video. It will have H.264 into an MPEG-4. It'll have some background music that'll be light and so you describe that. Functional is what it's got to achieve, how it's going to function in order to do it. So it's going to do this, it's going to explain this, it's going to meet this need of my client, it's going to give this information, it's going to fulfill these things which will nail home my outcome being a success. So the functional attributes, and I'll just give you a few here. The function of a Kingsway promo video, let me tell you now, it has to show an emotional connection between, say, staff and students, between students and students. Hey, this is a friendly school, no bullying, look how wonderful it is. It should show the surroundings look beautiful, nice, modern, clean, up to date. It should show students with uniforms tucked in, for example, just looking sharp. It should show modern facilities. It should show a wide range of activities taking place within a school, all with friendly smiles, all that stuff. Now that's functional. That's how this functions. This is the fulfilling the function of an advertorial, of showcasing our amazing school. Now the last bullet point for achieved outcome, for the achievement criteria, is producing a final brief comprised of a conceptual statement and specifications. Now, final brief, bear in mind that the title of this standard is brief development. Now, you cannot just put a final brief down and say, here I am, I've arrived. You must show throughout the 10 pages or whatever you've done, you must show that brief taking shape over the course of time that you have been working on it with your client and with your key stakeholders. And so as a result of meetings, as a result of surveys, as a result of feedback, as a result of research, you guys should be tweaking 2 or 3 times the attributes and therefore the specifications, more so the specifications than the attributes, but you should be tweaking the final outcome of what your specifications should be. Just a quick look at attributes for a second. An attribute is something that will make something successful. So you will see here on the page I've given you that through your ongoing meetings with your clients and stakeholders, it says after the bracket there, get the attributes needed for success. So I've just mentioned quite a few that the Kingsway School video would do. I've talked about the emotional connection, I've talked about the facilities, I've talked about showcasing the different classrooms, the different types of activities our students are involved in. So it's a good mix of, so it must have a good mix of not only academic but also the social and the cultural and maybe even the spiritual things that take place, the things that take place at Kingsway School. So you're showcasing the wide range, you're showing the emotional connection, you're showing the great facilities, all those things. So a video that will show these things, these are the attributes that will be required to have any showcase video, any promo video at Kingsway School. Now you imagine if you just had a promo video and all it showed was, say, cross country. Well, that would be pathetic. Or all it showed were people in classrooms sitting at desks. That would be missing a whole bunch of attributes. So you need attributes, an attribute of a wide range. If your video has this, that's great. Another attribute is it must have music that matches, a soundtrack that somehow matches what people are watching. We live in a media savvy world, and trust me, if you give the music that doesn't match, everyone knows straight away. They'll go, it doesn't work, that sucks, I don't want to watch it. So you've really got to work hard and survey your clients, survey your stakeholders to get that back. So attribute might be catchy, positive, uplifting music. Okay, then from those attributes you list the specifications you need that will fulfill them, that will meet them. So for example, if you've said you want uplifting, catchy music, then one of the specifications might be the music must be above, say, 110 beats a minute. Just saying, that's roundabout, it's a pretty quick little catchy type of speed. For the attributes needed for success in terms of the spread of activities, showing student activities, then one of your specifications must show sports activities, cultural activities, spiritual activities, academic activities. So that might be specifications, those four. And therefore, when the marker looks at your specifications, he or she will look at your video, look at whatever you've done, and see whether you've met those attributes, met those specifications, sorry. So each brief, just below the ongoing meetings and clients, I've written there with an arrow, social, physical. Remember that for merit, if you look at those social and physical attributes, you prioritize those for merit. So you move just from listing them. If you put them in a prioritized order, you're lining up for a merit. If you then justify the reasons that you prioritized this first, the physical, the social, and this particular one, this particular one, if you put them in order, prioritized order. Now say you had, for example, social and physical considerations, maybe say you had 10 or 15 of them. If you listed those from 1 to 15 and said in each case why that was first, why that was second, no marker, as long as you've done a very good justification, as long as you're showing why, no marker will mark you down. So you've got a guaranteed excellence. I'm just saying that. I think that's true. As long as you've got a very good justification, can say valid reasons why you and your client have arrived at this being priority 1, priority 2, priority 3. All right, now down to your brief. We looked at the final brief as being an achieved. Obviously, if you don't have a final brief, you can't achieve. So that's why they put a final brief as an achieved criteria. Each conceptual statement is simply the first place a marker will look to get the overview. A conceptual statement, I've said this many times in class, but a conceptual statement is an overview. It's an overview of what you're doing, and it should start with something like, my client, Mrs. Gray, is the media blah blah manager or something or other for Kingsway School, and she requires, in order to solve the, she requires a promotional video to be made for Kingsway School. The reason for this is Kingsway School has an issue, use the word issue there, with needing to fill their optionals classes in senior school with more students to provide more options. As a need or opportunity, this video will meet that and provide the perfect marketing opportunity even into overseas countries. Right, now we're going to look briefly at the merit and excellence criteria for the standard. And we've already talked about the first two bullet points of both the merit and excellence. Remember that we've talked about how we prioritized for the first bullet point of merit and justified why the outcome should be developed for the excellence criteria. I'll come back to that in a minute. So just remember that the second bullet point on merit, you just have to make sure that everything you're doing on the way through this brief development, you are showing ongoing feedback. So you must show that you've had meetings with key and wider stakeholders, key client, whoever it is, teacher, wider stakeholders, etc. So just show that you're taking note of what they say and adjusting your specifications as you go because of these meetings. Now I want to get to the word justify. I used to hate the word justify because I think in the kingdom of God you don't need to justify yourself. However, I get what they're getting at. They want to know that you really know what you're on about, and you've got to prove it by saying what you did and why. So the last two bullet points for excellence are describe the outcome to be developed. Now you've already done that anyway. And then justify why that particular outcome should be developed. I've talked briefly about that before, but at this point we're going to move into the second bullet point, justifying the specifications in relation to the physical and functional attributes required for the outcome. I want to show how that's done, and if we move to this markers feedback for this particular moderator's feedback, how to get a low excellence, and it's only a low excellence, but they say how to make it a more secure excellence at the bottom. But I want you to take note of what this marker has said. This student has undertaken comprehensive brief development, okay, so not just brief development but comprehensive, to address an issue within a determined context, and in your case it's video or whatever. This requires justifying why the specifications allow a judgment for that outcome's fitness or purpose in the broader sense. Let me speak to you in English now. It means that the final specifications you end up with for your video, for your website, that you arrived at from research, arrived at from meetings with your client, and arrived at from surveying stakeholders. Those specifications, you have to show why they make that particular outcome, whatever it is, successful, right? So you have to justify why that leads to a fitness for purpose tick for your video or tick for your website. So you go back through the specs you've done at the very end. So I'm anticipating you've done, say, 2 or 3 brief developments. You've got a final brief, and after the final brief you nail home the justifications. So you have a page after your final brief where you really aim to get this excellence. And a lot of you, in the past, a lot of students I've seen, they really have tried to justify, but they haven't nailed it home enough, and they've missed some of these important parts of a sentence. All right, so let's read through this again. Context considerations were linked to the issue and solution. So you're showing all of the considerations you've made, you show why they're a consideration, you link them to how this makes a solution. And this forms a basis for an initial conceptual statement. My client, blah, 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 needs this, needs this, needs this in order for it to be a success. Right. Number 2, iterative. This means ongoing. You have lots of meetings. Consultation and feedback informed the development. So all of these meetings we had, all of the surveys we did, this has informed my brief development and refinement and specifications. So you just keep on. If you've done this all the way through your document, you're home and hosed. 3rd bullet point, each context consideration was explored in more detail, which then informed. So you might have a list of, say, 10 or 20, I don't know how many, maybe 5, hope not, hope it's more. Each context consideration you looked at the beginning. Further through the document, you explore them in more detail, which then inform the specifications for the brief. So you keep on coming back to the specifications. These are clearly linked to stakeholder consultation. You've already done that. Lastly, a final brief was developed that reflects the decisions made throughout the practice. In other words, all your meetings, the results of. And that includes refined specifications. So refined means you've nailed them down, you've trimmed them down, you've got them very exact, that allow the outcome to be evaluated as fit for purpose in the broader sense. So that means that the marker sits there, they look at your specifications and they say, darn, yeah, that's a good idea. Yeah, the video should only be that long. Yes, you should use this song. And all of these things you've put in there for your website, for example, you've nailed why the colors should be here and why the logo should be there and why the navigation bar should be there. And if you've got them all there, tick, 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 tick. Yes, the specifications are there. And you're justifying why each of these is necessary for your website to really pop. Does that make sense? And so then you've got fit for purpose tick. Then you've got the student went on to justify the final solution against the requirements of the brief. So you've done the final thing. Well, my brief requirement was a video for 3 minutes, and it must do this, and it must do this, and must do this. See how my specifications do this. See how I've done this. I have done this, including the main context considerations in the final evaluation. By discussing the viability, that means how well it was done, of the solution, how well it meets the need or opportunity, and its potential fitness for purpose in a broader sense, and using stakeholder feedback to validate conclusions, this substantiated the justification that the specifications resolved or fixed the client's issue. I'm really sorry that's an involved sentence, but basically, if you do everything I've said, that will be covered. Then the marker goes on to say, to make this a more secure excellence, the student could have shown a more detailed justification of why the specifications and the practices used to develop the outcome allow for a judgment of fitness for purpose. Really, what you're saying is, allowing for a judgment, you're saying why the marker should give you an excellence. That's allowing for the judgment. So, see these things here? They add up to a perfect result where the client's happy, the need is met, the issue is solved. Accuracy and efficiency considerations and selection of solution options. Oh dear, that's teacher speak, so kind of forget that. But anyway, if you can nail it, nail it. I really think that I have tried to give you absolutely everything I can think of, and hopefully that'll be everything. I'm just going to go back to one little part of one of the things I wrote on the board. Okay, so remember that in your initial considerations, I've put in there the very first one you should have, before you put social and physical, put your own considerations of my ability, my time, my software, my hardware. These are resources, your own resources. I see that's definitely done on an exemplar, so just make sure you pop those in there somewhere and speak to those initially, especially what you need to do. I need to get this software, or I need to get my laptop fixed, or whatever you need to do. Say it, and that should be at the beginning. Later on, when you refine your social and physical considerations, you add to it for the excellence. You wouldn't go back over those because you've already done them. Alrighty, thanks.